everyone, I'm going to be making my very first gas bike build, and I want to remove the governor. I want to get as much as I can out of it. It's a $99 motor. You know what? If it shortens the life, so what? It's 99 bucks. I got this kit from Bikeberry. It doesn't matter who you get it from. It's all the same thing. It's a Predator motor from Harbor Freight. The only difference is this throttle assembly. This throttle assembly is designed just for gas bikes. So it's got the governor arm, and it's got the throttle cable assembly. If you bought your motor from, like I say, Harbor Freight, you don't have this part, and this part. You don't have none of that. Alright, you don't even have a spring-loaded return throttle. And like I say, before you do any of this, understand it's going to void your warranty. But you're going to remove this control arm and everything in here, and Vastly Custom Build has a good video on that. I'll leave the link down below. So after you remove your governor, and I'll show you in a video after I remove mine, you're going to make a push rod, and I'm a RC pilot, fly RC planes a lot, so we use a lot of these 256 push rods, and you have to make a Z-bend, which is very simple to do. And what it's going to do basically is go in that hole right there, and that was a 5/64 hole I drilled there. Reamed it out just a little bit because this rod is 5/64 too. You don't want any slop in there, you know, so don't ream out the hole too much. But you could basically see how it's going to re-hook up to the carburetor right where the linkage is hooked up to the governor. And you're going to save this spring, and you're going to save this spring. Don't toss them out. We're going to reuse them. You can toss out the governor arm and everything else. You're going to reuse this bracket. So, in the next video, we'll come back and I'll show you how to re-hook up your linkage. This is a very simple mod. It's very 100% fail-safe. I mean, I think it's more reliable hookup than it is with this governor arm and all that funky stuff. So, we'll see you back and show you how to hook up your linkage. Alright, we're back, and we're gonna, let me get all the engine in view here. We're back, and we're gonna finish up the modification of the throttle linkage. As you can see, I removed the governor. It was sitting like this and had this spring hooked there and over in a short little linkage, and then it had this spring hooked up here like that. So we removed all that, and I went over to Vastly Customs Build and followed his instructions on how to remove the whole butterfly gear or valve gear in there, and on and off valve and everything else. And so I removed it all. The only thing I did different is I did thread this hole out, and it is exactly 5/16. So if you take a 3/8 fine thread or a 3/8 coarse thread, it's just perfect for this. Thread it all the way through the inside of the block. One thing I gotta warn you on is you're gonna get shavings inside. So the way I did it was I had the cover off, and I put my finger and covered the hole from the inside. Then I started my tap. Once I got my tap started, I then rotated the engine over like this, and then finished up boring it out. And that dropped all the shavings down here where the governor used to be. So the governor's removed. This is a 3/8 bolt, fine thread. I chose fine thread because you get a better seal that way, and it's just, I think it looks great that way. So we're gonna hook up back up the linkage. Now I drilled these two holes here. They're 5/64, and you can see where I drilled them to. Let me show you a little closer how far I drilled them from this bend right here. And then I drilled it just about the same distance as this from apart. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to, let me reposition the camera. We're going to hook up the linkage. We use this 250, we call it 256 push rod. This is the same diameter as the linkage that used to hook up from the governor to the throttle. This is 256 push rod. I'll leave a link down where you can get it on eBay. Sorry, I think they only sell it in the 6-packs, but it's like $3 plus $3 shipping, and you'll have extra for your other builds. So anyways, we got those 2 holes drilled there, and so what we're going to do is, the way this was when it came from the factory, it was the linkage on this side was in the back hole, and over here it was in the front hole. Alright, and then the spring went from the front hole here to the back hole here. I call the back hole that way. So, what we're going to do, we're going to put our Z-bend into the hole, get it in there like that, and then we're going to lay it right over there. We got to make sure the throttle's closed all the way. We also want to back out the idle all the way. Okay? So that the throttle here is hitting the stop on the carburetor. It's perfect. Just what we want. Alright, once you got that done, get your little felt pen, mark right where that hole's at. Alright, once you mark where the hole's at, what I do is, it's real simple. Once you make these rods a few times, you get better at it. So you want to make sure this is straight down, so when you bend this, it's straight down too at 845. Alright, so how I do that is I make sure that's straight down, and I just take my thumb, I put my thumb right where the bend's going to be, or right on the mark, and then I just take my pliers and I put my pliers right up against my thumbnail and just make the bend. Okay, 45, just like that. Sorry if I was out, but I put my thumb right on the mark, and then I just brought the pliers right up to my thumbnail, and then I make the bend. Okay, and if it's a little short, I can bend it back and try it again. So we're going to cut off a little bit of this. Alright, so we can go this way and put it in this hole here, front here, and then back here, and see if we got that right. That looks pretty good. It's not binding up or anything. So we're going to make our, I think it's just a little bit, it's just a little bit long, so we're going to bend it back, or a little bit short, and then we're going to come back down a little bit further, and then rebend it. Like I say, you can make a couple bends on it if you got to do it right. You know, rebend it. So that should be perfect. Now we're going to make our second bend to complete the Z bend. So we're going to come down about, I don't know, 3/16 or so. You can see there. And then we're going to make the second bend. And then we're just going to clean that up. Make it look nice. And straighten her out. It's a little crooked. I'm going to straighten her out. And now I'm a little off here. This side is pointing down, and this is kind of pointing towards me a little bit. So I'm going to take my 2 pliers and straighten this out. So both of them are pointing down at a 90. Need to go some more. Sorry if I keep taking the wire out of view. There we go. And we got our Z bend. Now what we do, let me straighten this out a little bit. Now what we do is we just cut that off right there. Cut it off a little shorter. There we go. And we got our Z bend. Okay? Sorry, I'm not very good at doing videos or holding the wire in. Alright, we got that. So we're going to put it in the front one here. Check it out. Yeah, that looks pretty good. That will suffice. Straighten this out a little bit. You can see I got a little bend in it. Alright, now we're going to take our ratchet and remove the throttle base here. Find my ratchet. It's a 8mm, I believe. Yes, an 8. We got to remove this to put the linkage in. We're going to use red thread lock to put it back on. There's a bolt right behind this right here. Alright, 2 screws out. Now remember, this is just for the GasBike. If you bought this from Predator, there's another video online, and there's people that sell a kit for this linkage. So you can have the linkage. They have this part too. You know, they got some little L brackets that you screw here and here for the springs and stuff like that. So it works pretty good, I think, from what I've seen of it. So anyways, this is just for GasBike. So we remove this part. We got it in the back hole here, and we want it in the front hole here. So there you go. And now we're gonna reattach it. Get the back one first. The back one's going to be the hard one to get in. Oh, I was going to put thread lock on that. Got to put thread lock on that. I'm using red. You can use whatever color you want, but I think for this application you want red, because you don't want that thing to loosen up. And try to start this by hand. There we go, I think I got it. And then we'll get the front one started. And then we got our linkage hook back up. Oh, I forgot to put on that spring. Darn it. I'm glad I remembered that. Let me get this back off again. I want to put the spring back on because it does help return. That's why they offset these holes. The front hole here, back hole here, and then that spring goes on there. It does cause a little bit of spring back. This spring here, it's not very strong. So we're going to take this back off. And let me show you that spring. That was the real long skinny spring that we took off from the other linkage. And this end goes towards this way. Don't put it towards this way, because if you do, this is going to probably, well, I guess it doesn't interfere with it. I guess you could go either way. But we're going to go ahead and go back the way it was. But you can see how that Z-bend works, and that push rod will never come out. So that's how that goes, and then it hooks into the front hole here. We'll get that spring hooked up here in a minute. Let's go ahead and put the linkage back on. Back hole there, front hole here. Alright, screw back in there. Alright, let's get the other one in there. Some red Loctite on it. Okay. Okay, good and tight. We got full throttle there. Okay, so you may have to adjust this screw, because let me show you something. Let me back this screw out. Well, let me turn the idle back up and I'll show you. You guys should know this, because when you do it, this will bind up. So what we're going to do, we're going to turn the idle screw back in. This looks a little bent. Just straighten it out. Not going to hurt anything. So there we go. We turn the idle screw back up. Now watch what happens. What's happening is this is kind of binding up, so you'll have to adjust this screw appropriately. Now we can go ahead and hook up this spring. Goes in the front and then the back on this side. I should have hooked up the other side, this side first, but I think it'll go. There it goes. So that'll supply a lot of spring back right there. Now the other spring, if you want, because I think this spring will eventually break, and it's not a lot of spring to it to recoil the cable, especially if the cable's real long. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide this in this hole here where this spring is, but we want to make sure this shaft doesn't go down the middle of that spring. We want that shaft to come off the side. It went down that middle of that spring. We want it to come off to the side of the silver spring. There it goes. And then we just come right over here and hook it into here. So if this spring ever breaks, we still got backup. And then there we go. We got our throttle, full throttle. It's hitting both stops. That's perfect. And there you go, folks. Custom linkage. No more governor. I don't know. I'd say that's probably going to be maybe close to 4.5 horsepower. Maybe more. There you go, folks. If you have any questions, leave them down below and I'll answer them. Have a good one.